Excited to be here. My name is Scott Hansen, and this is Critical Conversations. I think the tagline is how to have healthy interpersonal staff relations and how to nurture them. I'm thinking about what Andy said about like stressors. We don't know each other. We don't know what stressors have people are going through. I'm not really stressed about this, but I just got a thing from We Energy that says your house may be experiencing an outage if you lost power and stuff. So I don't know if it's windy, if that's the deal, but so that's fun. Not stressed though.
State your resistance.
Yeah, right. Thanks for being here. Just a little bit about myself. I've been this August, I think, will make 20 years here in Milwaukee. I've spent my whole education career on the south side of Milwaukee. Started at Nativity Jesuit Middle School as a volunteer teacher for 2 years, and then as I got older, I needed to get like a real paying job. So Notre Dame was kind enough to hire me as a full-time teacher on the condition that I get my license, which I got here at Alverno. I did the license or the master's program here. Yeah. And through that, my third year of Notre Dame, there was a woman named Patricia Hoban who was starting a school called Carmen, and she was getting a license or a higher degree here. And she was talking to Sister Mary Dietz, who was the dean of the graduate program. She said, I need someone to develop a social studies curriculum for this new school I'm starting. If you know anybody? And I had just graduated from Alverno with my degree. So she's like, well, I know this guy named Scott. Why don't you talk to him? Had coffee with Patricia. And while in my last spring at Notre Dame, I developed the initial social studies curriculum for Carmen. And she's like, okay, this is great. I need someone to teach it. Interested? So all through the 5 years I spent at Nativity Notre Dame, I was part of the young crew back then, and we all were kind of talking about how cool it would be to start a school, and you could do this, and you could do that, you could handle this part, you could handle this part, and then this opportunity to help start Carmen came along, so I jumped at that. Spent the first 5 years there as a social studies teacher, and then the last 4 years at Carmen, I was the dean of students and culture. While I was at Carmen, I was encouraged to get my admin degree, and it was something that I was interested in. And so I got a second master's degree from Alverno in administration and director of curriculum instruction. And so that's been primed the pump for me to start looking for principalships, and I've been at St. Joseph Academy for 6 years. So yeah, I feel like, you got to set yourself up for future opportunities, and I feel blessed that God has put things in my path that seem to fit at the moment. So I would encourage you to keep that mindset as well, and nurture others. It's one of the best parts of being in administration is to nurture the careers of the teachers and staff, as well as the students. But it's really fulfilling. I just went back for more. My wife there, Lisa, she always jokes that I'm just collecting master's degrees, but there was an MBA program at MSOE that I felt had a few other courses that I didn't get before that I wanted to pursue. So I've just completed that in November. And then I have 2 kids. My 2-year-old is named Tolif, named after my grandfather, and my 4-year-old daughter is named Mamie. And we just bought a camper last fall, so we haven't actually been able to take it out yet, but that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So yeah, just a little bit about me. So why the word critical for critical conversations? Well, it means to have a decisive or crucial importance in the success, failure, or existence of something. And in this case, for our purposes, the something is our professional working relationships with one another. So I think one of the reasons I spend a couple minutes talking about myself is because I think it's important to develop those personal relationships at school. And I think everyone here would agree, and those are fun to have. It's fun to develop those personal relationships. I think sometimes things that get overlooked is the development of the professional relationship. And that's where things like critical conversations come in. Healthy balance of both. One quote that I can't believe I don't have here, I thought this was from Douglas Stone. I think both these quotes from Douglas Stone, who wrote a book on critical conversations. The single most important thing you can do is to shift your internal stance from I understand to help me understand. Everything else follows from that. And so this is a picture of the phone in my office. I took one of those little small Post-it notes and put it right there. It says, help me understand. If someone is calling me with, whether it's a parent calling to complain about an incident that happened with a teacher or a student, or if it's teachers complaining that they don't have the supplies they need, or are just bringing up a concern to me, instead of just nodding and say I get it, I understand. It's like, okay, tell me more, help me understand. Let's have a conversation about it instead of just taking notes and fixing it. And then another thing that Doug Stone says is to remind yourself that if you think you already understand how someone feels or what they're trying to say, it's a delusion. Remember a time when you were so sure you were right and then discovered one little fact that changed everything. There's always more to learn. I think for me, those there are examples of those that come up in my personal life, but then also my professional life. A teacher, for example, might email me about something, and so I might not have the whole story, and I start creating my own idea of what's going on. But then when I actually go into the classroom and see what this teacher is seeing and experiencing, it makes a whole lot more sense what's going on. In personal relationships, sometimes you think you're anticipating what this person is thinking because of the way they said something, but then you find out one more detail, and it's like, oh, yeah, I get it. So it's a broad statement, but I think we can all relate to that. So part of critical conversations is allowing the structure, is providing a structure and creating a space for all these little facts to come into play in an effective way, so that people can understand each other better. One thing I didn't put up here, but there's a quote from Brené Brown. I think it's from her book, Dare to Lead. She has, I think, several TED Talks, but she says something, she always talks about creating a story in your head. The story I'm telling myself is, and that's one way she approaches conversations. Yeah, it's gotta be honest, what I'm telling myself right now is that you don't like the way I'm, keeping the kitchen clean or whatever. She has a story about her husband in the kitchen. I can't remember exactly, but before we have a critical conversation, we're developing these stories in our heads about why that other person did or said the things that they did. When oftentimes you realize, oh, no, actually they're not even thinking about it anymore, and they weren't trying to offend you, and they weren't trying to get back at you or anything like that, or any negative agenda. So today's learning targets are to find compelling reasons we avoid critical conversations. I can apply successful strategies for having critical conversations in a low stakes setting, and I can identify one strategy to use in the near future. So my hope is that you have something in your metaphorical back pocket that you will take with you and try in the next week. If this was during the school year, I'd say something you would try tomorrow in school. And if you're still at your school this summer, maybe you do have that opportunity to try something sooner rather than later. So a couple non-examples, just to kind of break the ice a little bit and have a little fun. This is an example of how not hearing the other person can lead to misunderstanding.
First there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
However, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way.
It's true, but the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
Well, you wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat.
No, see, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Whoa, wait a second. Who's they?
Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
So one person there is thinking they're having this great critical conversation, but clearly not the other one. So, let's skip that. Yeah, and so obviously what the woman was saying was feigning interest in what the other person was saying. So not suggestive, but still humorous. So I know I got the bar in the way, but this is this is really comfortable for everyone to do, right? That's kind of the joke here. Nope, it isn't. I still get butterflies sometimes when I have to have a critical conversation. I've been talking about this for 10 years, it seems, 9-10 years. But I still do it because it's important. But yes, my brain sometimes, or maybe it's more my heart, feels that way. When Andy was talking about that one or maybe 2 or 3 people that he kind of makes it go whatever sound he made, sometimes it feels like that. But it's important to do, and it's okay. So why is this hard? I did put I should have put on there. I put a little bit.ly thing, which will be up on the next screen. But there's paper up there. There's four sheets on each paper. You can use the front side to kind of scribble some notes on this. I don't think that's exactly what the prompts are yet, but maybe just at the top margin, or if you have a separate notebook, that's fine. But take a minute, describe your current approach to dealing with conflict. What would you like to change about your approach and possibly gain from this session? What have you learned about yourself when it comes to critical conversations? And what are some reasons you and colleagues avoid engaging in critical conversations? So I'm actually going to give you 4 minutes, a minute for each. This is not written anywhere on the handouts, but you don't have to copy the prompts. If you want to, you can. But just jot down your notes for each prompt, and then we'll take a little time to share out. So I'm putting 4 minutes on the timer. Go ahead and get some thoughts on paper. about 20 more seconds. I don't think we need the full 4 minutes. All right, let's get some hands in the air for the first one. How many of you wrote something about your current approach? How many of you said something about needing to think about it first, or needing some time to process? Anyone take that stance? Okay, a couple people. How many of you wrote for your current approach is needing to like say something verbally right away? 1, 2. Yep. What are the other options? what other approaches did you write down? Yeah.
Mandy on Zoom said her current approach is to pray first, realize that I have done and survived hard things before, and I remember that clear is kind and try to be as clear as possible.
Nice. Clear is kind. I think that's another Brene Brownism. What else? What other suggestions? Yeah.
Yeah, I had stress, pray, talk about it, pray, stress, talk about it, pray. Pray some more. Then confront the person.
Right on. All right. Any other variations? Yeah.
I mean, definitely pray, but I put discern the situation because sometimes some conversations are not worth having. And it, like if it's not necessary for documentation or for, like.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. What's the threshold for having? Yeah. Any others?
Trying to always remember that people have good intentions,
Right.
and to give grace. You know, sometimes we think something about someone and it's like, no, they have good intentions. So always err on that.
I actually accept that change is good and necessary, because that's typically why others, because not me, of course. Because I embrace courageous conversations because of the possible, change and what can be the positive outcome.
Right. And others run from them.
Yeah,
So,
I run to it.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we have 6 different, that we just articulated, 6 different approaches. Go ahead.
It's interesting what you just said. I sometimes am in situations where I didn't realize I was walking into a situation where I was dealing with conflict. Because like you, I don't see it as a conflict.
Right.
And then it's like, oh.
Yeah, others do like,
Yeah. So
because it's not a conflict for me, and it's being aware that other people, may see it as difficult and as a conflict.
exactly. Yep. So I just wanted to name that, or just say that we all approach conflict differently. So this is intended just to give like a kind of a structured way to do it so that everyone feels comfortable. So let's keep moving forward. I hope you found reflecting on the other prompts fruitful. We're gonna skip the turn and talk just for sake of time. We'll get a chance to talk. So why should we do this? To have healthy conflict. You put people together, there's going to be conflict. There's a motto or phrase saying something like forming, storming, norming, performing. So you form the group, forming, norming, forming, storming. You form the group, you storm because people are kind of figuring out who they are, and there's conflict. And you realize we need to set some norms, so you start norming, and then you start performing. And I haven't seen the show in a long time, but Survivor used to be one of my favorite shows ever. And it's got that whole process. It happens every season. If you know what Survivor is, where they stranded on an island and they have to get by. The first few episodes are always very interesting related to that. So to have healthy conflict, it's essential to have a common purpose. To live our mission. St. Joseph Academy's mission is to educate all students to be lifelong learners and problem solvers. To build, maintain, and model trust and respect among all students for students to see. We all know that staff culture trickles down into student culture. And then insert common purpose from your organization. Think about anything else that is your common purpose. You need to have that to have healthy conflict as well. And so critical conversations is a way to have healthy conflict, where something good actually comes from it. Okay, so one strategy, there's two strategies to talk about. We're spending most of our time on strategy one, but seek to understand what happened from the other person's point of view by asking questions. This is the help me understand part. Two, then explain your point of view. One of Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly successful teams, he says, seek to understand, then to be understood. And I always, it wasn't clear to me at first that it is then to be understood rather than then to be understood. So seek to understand, if you think of it this way, seek to understand then to be understood, then that means you shouldn't be understood. That doesn't make any sense. So it's important to remember, like, seek to understand the other person's point of view and then have yourself be understood, because it's only fair and just that both of you feel that you explained your points of view. So then you explain your point of view, but you want to seek the other person's first, because that might inform and it might actually become a very good conversation. I didn't know that. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Or it leads to a more healthy conversation. The third step is to share your feelings, the F word, feelings. Yes, we adults sometimes think we get a pass because we're adults now and we don't have to talk about our feelings because kids, we help kids do that. But it's important to share as adults how someone's actions or what they said made you feel, and to ask to understand their feelings. And then find a solution. Work together to figure out a way to either manage the problem or interact respectfully moving forward. A short anecdote from my personal experience. I once had it was a peer, and I walked into her office, and she greeted me with something along the lines of, "Oh, person number 1 on my blank list." I was like, "Really?" Okay. Not expected, and there was just a quick question I needed answered, so I did that. I didn't have a conversation about it right then and there, but I left and I thought about it and perseverated on it. I was like, that is not okay. It doesn't go against our norms, or it goes against our professional norms. So then I had a conversation. So that third piece there, explaining your feelings, I told her, I said, remember yesterday when you greeted me with this phrase, and I said it verbatim. I was like, well, A, it was unprofessional, and B, it made me feel upset and disrespected. And she did not realize that she had used the S word. And she said she admitted she was frustrated, but to her, that was a throwaway comment. In fact, it was almost something like, she was almost in a way trying to make a joke out of it, because I had missed a report or something I did made her process delayed or something like that. So I said, well, you did say it, and it's not like what I expect from a coworker, and so I need to have an agreement, or are you open to an agreement to, speak more professionally? I forget exactly how I said it, but that was definitely a critical conversation that had to happen, because had I not said something, she could have continued to talk that way and think that was okay. So, so as I had that conversation, though, when I sought to understand where that came from, because that's literally what I said, where did that come from? She explained she had three major stressors going on, combined, like professional and personal combined. And so, of course, we know that doesn't excuse misbehavior or disrespectful speech, but it certainly made me understand how someone could say something like that, even though it's still unprofessional. All right, so that's strategy 1. Strategy 2 is something that we use with students a lot, and I have used this with adults, but more so with students. It's a restorative practice, so you may already know it. But I feel blank when you blank as blank. What I want or what I need you to know about me in order to work together is blank. And so to use this strategy, standard restorative practice for kids. That works for us adults too, yes. So the way you execute the strategy is you have each person written down or write down their responses to each of these prompts separately in different rooms, especially with kids, because you don't want them to be, there's just a weird social dynamic if they're filling it out right next to each other. And then as someone facilitating the process, whether it's with adults or with kids, you go to each room and you see how they're filling it out, because some people might not take it seriously and they just throw a couple words on there. So sometimes you have to coach them through, like, no, be honest. How did that make you feel? Or, and why does it make you feel that way? So it takes a little bit of coaching, but then you bring the two people back and you tell them, hey, we had the same prompts. And so now we're going to share them. And you may know this from teaching, but whenever kids have something that they can read, they're way more willing to share than if they have to think of it off the top of their heads. So whether it's, what did you think the theme of this chapter was that the author was trying to convey, or how did you feel when so-and-so pushed you in the lunch line, having them write down how they're feeling will get the words out in a more genuine way and in a much faster way if they can just read what they wrote instead of having to come out on the spot. So 2 strategies to have them. One more non-example, and then we're going to do some practice. So this is not a competition, is the point of this non-example. It's not like who can have the best critical conversations in the school. It's nothing like that. Like I said, I've talked about this for years, but I still have to kind of prep myself for it, and it's not always easy, and I feel like it's always a little awkward. Just sometimes it's less awkward versus more awkward.
Believe this.
Why did you do this, Allie? This is terrible.
Oh, great.
This is Michael's giraffe. He's crying now. Why did you do this?
Cause.
Cause is not an answer.
Active listening.
Ray, that doesn't work.
It works. I just use it on the worst kids in the neighborhood.
Would you look at this? Look what she did.
Just try it. Try it.
No, Ray.
I'll do it. You want me to do it?
No,
I'll do it.
No. Do it. Okay. Allie, let's talk about what you did.
I don't want to talk.
Are you feeling angry?
Reflect back.
You're angry.
Yes.
Okay. But it's not okay to rip up toys when we're angry.
Judgmental.
You are angry because...
Because it used to be your toy.
Oh.
Yes. I don't like Michael and Jeffrey.
I see. You think that Mommy and Daddy pay too much attention to Michael and Jeffrey.
Ray, okay, I was handling this.
They get everything.
Right, and you're upset because we gave them your old giraffe.
I still liked it.
But you weren't playing with it.
But that doesn't matter, though, because it was still yours. And you're mad because we gave it to Michael without asking you, right?
Right.
Well, Mommy and Daddy made a mistake. And everybody makes mistakes, right, Mommy?
Yes.
Do you feel better now, Allie?
Yes, can I have the giraffe?
Well, it's broken, honey.
I know, I want to try to fix it for Michael.
Uh-huh. This way.
Thank you, Daddy.
See what I did there?
Yeah. Can't believe it. It's pretty amazing. You did it.
Anything else need taken care of while I'm around here?
No.
What? What's the matter?
Nothing with you, obviously.
Don't go by me. I'm a natural. Don't worry, you'll get it.
Oh, look. Don't act so proud of yourself. Listen, if I hadn't dragged you to that stupid class, you'd still be standing there going, hey, no TV.
You're feeling inadequate because I mastered it before you.
Oh, don't give me that active listening crap. Where do you get off listening to me?
Never happen again.
Just a humorous example there of how conversations can go. So again, it takes practice, and I know. Well, let's get into it. So, should I engage in a critical conversation? So when to engage? When there's a violation of our professional community norms previously agreed upon. If your organization doesn't have a set of norms that you've agreed to, I highly suggest you engage in that. If your organization is a school, then I would suggest doing that in August with your staff. And that would be for norms on how staff agrees to get along or how to interact with each other throughout the school year. I know we usually ask teachers to do this with their students in the classroom. So if you're leading the school, I think it makes sense to do the same with your staff. These are hours. Respect and care for the team, be present, be on. It used to be just be on time. Every year we put these up in August and say we give a 2 or 3 day window, like take some time to think about it, and we'll take suggestions, email me suggestions, and then we'll finalize it in 3 days. So it used to be on time, and then one year someone added, can we put end on time on there as well? So it's part of our norms to respect each other's time. Be open to new ideas and realities. Maintain confidentiality, and seek to understand then to be understood. So develop yours, but in the cases that I've chosen to have critical conversations, or people have had them with me, it's every one of them has had something to do with one of these norms. When I was at Carmen, someone came and had a critical conversation with me because this is when I was dean, and my monthly report affected her work in some way. I forget what it was. And so, I was sitting at my desk, and she knocked on the door. She said, "We need to have a conversation." And that was kind of our agreed upon, like, oh, okay, like that's how we're going to approach these. It's just by simply stating that I'd like to have a conversation, or I think we need to have a conversation. And it was one of those where, like, I don't know how long she was thinking about it, but she probably thought it was going to be a rough conversation, but she told me how my work, or lack thereof, was affecting hers. And I didn't know, I had no idea. So now that I knew, we fixed it and we moved on. So that goes to the first one, respect for the team, respect and care for the team. When to engage in critical conversation, so norms, when there's unprofessional or unproductive behavior, when you can't stop thinking about it, 24-hour rule is what we call it, and when it's low stakes. Low stakes is a big one. You may have had professional relationships where a person has done or said 2, 3, 4, 5 different things. And then when you finally decide to engage in it, it's a much higher stakes conversation, because you start talking about one thing, and then you said, yeah, but then you also did this, and you start adding to the laundry list. That becomes higher stakes and much more charged emotions. If you were to have addressed it right at that low stakes, the first one, where it's lower stakes, like maybe a common misunderstanding, that relationship would have had like a deposit in it by addressing that low stakes issue first. And then when another thing happens, you have already had that first initial conversation, would have greased the wheels for that next conversation. And the relationship would have been stronger. So I would encourage you, especially if you're in leadership positions, to look for those low stakes opportunities. Mind for conflict, I think, is a phrase. I don't know if it's from a book, but look for those opportunities to address those low stakes things first and early in the school year. I'm still working on that myself. When to let it go. So we were talking about this a little bit before. When it's a human error, you know what? Like, person made a mistake. You're gonna get on their case for that. If it's a pet peeve, I might be saying a lot. I don't know if I'm doing anything. Maybe I'm moving too much. That might be a pet peeve. Scott, stop saying like that's not necessarily a critical conversation, right? People just do things. And then if you have stopped thinking about it after 24 hours, it's probably not something that's critical to have a conversation about. All right, so here's the bit.ly. If you have a cell phone, you can take a minute to just type this in. It'll take you to a Google Drive that has the forms you have on a table on it. It has the PowerPoint on it, and it has some scenarios also on there. So what you have in front of you is the personal reflection and connection to the process. Without the critical conversation reflection sheets. That's what this one is, where it says my perspective. I did not print out the scenarios sheet, so if someone at your table can pull up that bit.ly, you can kind of read through them. There's like 15 or so scenarios on that. And then decide which one you would like to practice and which strategy you want to use, whether it's the 4 steps or the I feel blank when you blank. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Why don't we take a couple of minutes just to fill out, think about it. The directions for this sheet are think about a critical conversation in a professional setting that you avoided or ended poorly in the past 12 months. Respond to the questions below and complete both sets of questions, including their perspective. Don't use names. This is great practice and sequence to understand first. So go ahead and take some time to fill this out. If you can't think of one, then I would encourage you to start reading through the scenarios. But in a few minutes, we're gonna role play at your tables, just practice how it might sound to have a critical conversation. And you can either use your anonymous one that maybe you wish you could have another chance at doing. So use that to practice, or you can role play using the scenarios. And you can just choose parts that way. All right. Anything I can clarify? Because I feel like sometimes, I don't know if you knew this, but when you woke up today around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you were going to have an opportunity to act. So I'm going to give you a chance to role play with your table mates. But I want to introduce Denise, who's been my supporter here. It's graciously accepted the invite to role play with me how a critical conversation might sound. And yes, it is dripping with cheese, but you know, these role plays are nice, fun, safe environments for us to practice saying things that maybe we're not used to. And so it might sound a little cheesy, but at least we're getting the words out there and we're getting the process out. So this one's about Chromebook carts, and I think all schools now can relate to Chromebook carts issues. So we are 2 teachers, okay? So good morning, Denise. Thank you for taking some time to talk with me today.
No problem. What's happening?
Well, I feel like we should have a conversation about something that's been on my mind.
Okay, sure. About what?
Well, it's about the Chromebook cart that we share. Can you help me understand the process you have students go through when they're done using them?
Yeah, when it's the end of the lesson, I tell them to put them away and plug the cords. I try to keep the responsibility on the kids. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
It is, totally. But I think we also need to confirm that they're putting them away correctly. If it's every now and then, I totally get it, I understand. But the last 3 times I've gotten the cart, they've been completely disheveled and not charged. I don't know, it just honestly feels kind of disrespectful.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, I mean, like we're both trying to get ready for class. The cart is always ready for your class because I take the time to make sure the students get it set for you. And I guess I'm not feeling that coming back my way.
Well, shoot. I can I can see how you would feel that way. I'm sorry. You know what? I'll tighten up my process. In fact, let me know the next time they aren't ready. I'm betting it'll be quite some time.
Well, thank you. I really didn't want this to be a big thing, but it just kept nagging at me.
No, I totally get it. Now that I think about it, I'm sure I'd feel the same way. No worries.
Thank you. And see. So yeah, that's how it could sound. So I'm going to ask you to pick one of the scenarios that were pre-written, or use one that is on your mind from this past school year that you want to try out. If you want to stand up and use the room, even if you want to go out in the hallway and do some role playing, that's totally fine too. You can mix and mingle tables too if you want to. Let's take 2:05. Let's take until 2:20. Let's be back here at 2:20. All right, and then we'll wrap it up. And back up here. All right, thank you. Just a couple of final thoughts. From personal experience, I just finished my 6th year as principal. The 4th August, teach beginning of the year PD. The 4th year, I was like, you know what, putting the schedule together. I think the culture's set. We don't need to do conversations. Keep going. Give the time back to the teachers, that hour. And then halfway through that year, it was like, I should not have done that, because there were conversations not happening that should have been happening, and it was becoming several conversations that could have been low stakes turned into high stakes inter-staff drama that was easily preventable. And so I will never again have an August PD that doesn't include 1 hour of this conversation. I did this presentation at the Archdiocese Conference in October, and a principal of a school, he was kind of filling in, I think, as interim of a long-standing school in the area, been there for decades. And he asked me to give this presentation to his staff halfway through the year because he thought it was needed, and the culture that had just developed. You know how it is, like, especially if the school has been around a long time, sometimes you don't even see it because you're in it, or maybe you're the veteran at the school, and you don't realize kind of some of the things that are occurring. So hopefully you feel like you can bring some of this back. And then also my hope is that even if you didn't even get a chance to role play effectively, maybe just being in this conversation for an hour has made you realize that maybe you need to talk to someone back at school, or maybe you need to have a couple conversations like this. So I'd encourage you that even though you might get butterflies, even though it might be awkward, even though it might involve some tears, honestly, it's important to have. So some final thoughts is you must do this faithfully. You got to commit to it, even when those butterflies occur. This isn't about you. It's about the relationship. It's not about you. It's about the relationship. Thirdly, feedback is a gift that you are bestowing on your colleague. And remember that good team players crave feedback. I want someone to tell me, give me feedback, even if I did something not as well, because I want to get better. Good team players want what's best for the team, and they crave that feedback. If they're running from feedback, it might be a red flag. Do not wait, do it now, or as soon as you can. And then also, and I conclude, when I do this with my staff every year, I conclude the presentation with this, that this is now our common expectation. So if you come to me with concern about you and another coworker, I'm going to ask, did you have a conversation with them yet? And if you didn't, that's fine. Maybe you just need some advice. Maybe you need to role play it with me first before you have it. But it's our common expectation now that we have these A to B conversations at a low stakes level. And if you don't, we're going to ask you to. And if you didn't, that's okay. We'll still work with you. But that's the expectation. We're going to say, okay, tell us about it. Let me work through it with you. And now go have that conversation. You can do it. Okay. And then a note from Captain Obvious, you should never, ever share with students any critical conversations you've had with other staff, no matter how wonderful the result is. This is an adult thing. We don't talk about it with other students. So again, I hope you have one strategy that you take away with you, and a couple sources I used from this, and my contact info. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
one more note on the back of your program, there's a QR code for an evaluation. We hope that you can fill that out sometime. Thank you.
Thank you.